Okay, good morning. This week we are back on Fowler and Gilbert business, and we are in plain clothes actually. We've just been and had a meeting with a big customer of ours down the road, and while we're on the road today, I thought, given that we can't do anything about the meeting that we've just been to, I thought we'll nip and see two jobs which are quite local to where we've been for the meeting and have a bit of a catch up. So if you remember looking back, this is the job where we had an element of groundworks to do, albeit very small. We've got a soakaway to put in, which we've not yet done, but the footings went in the last time we were here, and I think that's the last thing that you guys saw of this site. We've then manufactured the steel frame building. Now we're here to put it up. The guys have been yesterday, they put the frame up yesterday. Lee Woods and the guys have turned up, they've netted it and railed it for us. All the roof packs are built up, and basically we're ready this afternoon to get the roof on. So this is a fairly quick job for us because it's a straw building, it's going to be needed for harvest. Ultimately, it's just a roof on legs. Now, as you look down the side, you might be saying, well, there's cleats all down the side of the building, which would point at the fact that it's going to be cladded. There's the possibility of it being cladded at a later date. The only cladding on this building that we're doing is the square to eaves, which is the triangle basically at each end of the building. So for us, there's no concrete floor going in this. We're just going to stone up. Once the customer has grouted the legs in, we'll then stone everything back round. We've then got the downpipes to put on, which the customer wants the downpipes one end. So we put a weir on the other end, so if obviously the gutter starts filling up too quick, the water can get away, but the bulk of the water then will go off and into a soakaway at the far end. Then the only thing really left for us to do at that point is just to re-level the yard area with the stone, with the topping material, so everything flows, and that's pretty much it for us here done then. So for us, like I say, this is quite a quick in and out job because it is just a roof on legs. So we should be fairly quickly wrapped up here today with the roof going on, nets and rails down tomorrow. We'll get that boarded in by the end of the week, and that's it done. We're now going to nip over to the other job that you've seen the start point, and we've had a number of issues on that job. So we'll show you all them and explain them when we get there. But while we're going, pre-recorded a few weeks ago, we nipped off to a little show. So I'll show you a little bit of that while we're traveling over the next job. Okay, so a little bit of a side note, we have decided on the back of a few weeks ago when we went to cereals and I said how the show had declined, it had got smaller, we hadn't got the footfall and it was an expensive show to get into. We've come to the Arable Event to have a look. It's a one-day show, it's a relatively small show in comparison to the national sort of cereals event, but it's set out really nice, it's got a real nice feel to it. There's quite a lot of folk here, and basically we're doing a recce as to what our show calendar of next year is going to look like, and I think this is one, subject to what the costs are to exhibit here, that we're going to look at doing, because it is completely free to get into, so it's not got the £50 price tag on to get through the gate like cereals has. It's sponsored by a number of people, but mainly Winstay and GrainLink, and they have got a tent on here. It's free breakfast, it's free lunch, free teas, free coffees, free as much beer as you want to drink all day long. They've got some big speakers on as well. They've got Ollie Johnson, they've got Ollie Harrison, as in Ollie Blogs, they've got Ryan Woolley, and they've also got the Cheerful Charlie coming this afternoon. So in terms of footfall, I think them big names are going to bring that footfall to the stand as well, or to the show as well, and I think it's definitely worth us looking at for next year. So that is it from the Arable Event. We've come out with some goodies. We've got a boot bag, we've got a coal bag, and we've seen Angela from the Cheshire Farmer, who's a friend of ours, and actually a fellow YouTuber with The Real Country File. Link is here. So it was really nice. We saw a lot of customers of ours and friends locally, because we are literally just half an hour from home. So as far as the show goes, as long as the stand cost isn't too expensive, we'll definitely be coming, because there's no accommodation costs. In terms of food, all the food and drink that you want is free while you're here, so you've not got a massive cost during the day just to keep yourself fed and watered. So I think all in all, it should be a very good show for us, and I think we will perhaps concentrate a little bit more on the smaller shows as opposed to the bigger national shows. Obviously Lamma is the best show of the year, and it is the national big show at the NEC, so we're definitely not going to walk away from that one. But I certainly think, although we'll try cereals for one more time next year, if we have the same footfall as we've had this year, next year, then I think we'll probably kick cereals into touch and we'll look at doing this show here. I'm quite interested actually, if anybody knows of any shows that they think would be good for us or that they want to see us at because it's in an area that we don't normally cover or go to, drop a comment in the box at the end of the video, or again, lee.gilbert1 on Instagram, and drop us a private message, because it'd be quite interesting to see what you guys think about what shows throughout the country, because we will go nationally. Our next show after today is actually in Inverness, or just north of Inverness, Moor of Ord, which is the Black Isle show. So we're not scared about going anywhere in the country to exhibit. It's just, it's got to be cost effective for us. Anyway, that's it from here at the Arable Event. Back to the working week. Okay, so here we are on the second job of the day, and this is the project itself that we've had some problems with. And I'm going to say that although I directly didn't cause the problems, there is an element that we've got to address, which I've got to take an element of blame for. Now, I know you're all going to find this really surprising because, you know, with this here, I am Mr. Perfection. You all agree with that, you have done. And if you look at me, you very much see not just this, but you're seeing a mixture of either this chap or this chap, mainly this chap for the hair and this chap for the body. Just to show there is an element of me that is human, I have made an error. Now, when we did this job, we had a new chap come along from an erecting point of view. Now, the previous video, we'll put a few clips on here. We're going to remove the previous video from the library, and the reason we're doing that is because I don't want to badmouth anyone. We've had a disagreement on the project and they've gone off their own way to do their own thing. But ultimately here with us, where I'm harbouring an element of the blame, is because I vetted this new erector before we started, and albeit the conversation, the meeting that we had and the first point on site when we started, everything went pretty well. I was told all the right things. I've done the job for the last 20 years, so I know what questions to ask. I asked the questions and I actually got the right answers back. So the theory element was there. There was a bit of a bad start because as we started here, the site had been prepared by the customer and there was a massive downpour of rain pretty much every day for weeks on end, and the material that was laid was mainly chalk. So that did cause a few problems for the erector, which wasn't necessarily his fault, but again, I will say, having done the job year in, year out for as long as I have, there's certainly certain jobs you would and would not do depending on what the weather and the ground conditions were like. So a little bit of naivety and not really enough experience there to have managed a site that was chalk while we were having lots of rain and lots of wet on the site. So it's cost us a small fortune to put this right. Now, there was a mixture of everything. The buildings and the frames went up, everything went up absolutely fine. But what we were finding, and you can see a little bit of it here, dirt everywhere of where the materials were stacked when first arrived at site, and then get into their materials and fit in them, i.e. the panels. They're absolutely lorbed in crap. Same again with a lot of the steel work. So a lot of the steel work now, what we're having to do is either we're washing it down, if that's then marking the steel, or the steel is marked, we're then having to repaint what elements are then exposed or don't look right. So again, that's normally a big sort of element of time and effort of machinery hire, guys on site, they're here and they should be somewhere else, that we're having to spend to get this right, because when we leave it will be absolutely pristine, clean and brilliant. The other big issue that we've had have been the cladding sheets, because again, in terms of when you're setting your site out and you're putting your materials out, you make sure that everything is stacked where it can't be damaged. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and a lot of the materials were damaged. So we've had a small fortune on brand new cladding sheets. And not only that, because we don't trust what works have been done to the standard that we want them done to, we've then had to go over every single nut bolt washer to make sure everything is right. And it's a good job we did, because there was an immense amount of little bits that weren't finished or weren't done right or weren't tightened up or bolts missing. So albeit the first erector who come to site had done the frames and the roof, we've had to go over everything with a tooth comb, redo what was wrong. We've then had to put the bolts in that were missing and all the bits and bobs, and then we've had to reorder the cladding sheets anything like that that was damaged, flashing wise. We've had to reorder everything, get down here and get it all put right. So this has been a bit of a lengthy process for our customer to have the 2 buildings that we've got on site here finished. We've basically got a couple more flashings and bits and bobs. We're going to have to come in with a pressure washer and pressure wash these panels off to make sure they're pristine clean. We've got a bit of Silcoflexing to do, and then ultimately we're ready for having a conversation about handover of the buildings. Luckily for us, the customer that we've got here is not just a very good customer of ours, but he's actually become a bit of a friend of mine over the last few years. So he's been very understanding with us, and he's not lost his temper with me as yet. So I'm hoping that we can get this put right, then we can start looking at what is going on groundworks wise going forward, as to whether at the moment we're going to leave it as a stone base so that they can utilise the buildings for the balance of this year, because really we should have been finished probably about a month ago now, or whether there is still the time with everything else that they've got going on the farm to then start laying some concrete and get the yards concreted in between. So if you do not remember this particular site and you can't now look back to see what it was when we first started, we'll put a little clip in a minute of what the site was like. But ultimately the site itself was very much on a slope like that. So when it was dug off, there was a cut and fill element done, and then where it comes to the fill, we then put this retaining panel round the bottom. So floor level of the building here is there, and then we put the additional retaining panel in that then will retain the ground on that side, with the ability that this side of the site going forward, so if there's ever another building going onto this, which we've pre-drilled ready for that to happen, if it happens, I don't know, but if it does, then we can lower this element of the site, so we haven't got to then fill a massive area around here and cost a fortune in groundworks. So it was a particularly tricky site in terms of the design with the levels and the bits and bobs, but the basic cut and fill is what has sorted it out. I'm actually super pleased, and it's a real shame that we've had the problems, because when you stand at the road and look down, the buildings look absolutely fantastic. They look perfect on the site, so I'm chuffed to bits with how they've gone in. And in terms of the intended use and the functionality of the site, this will work absolutely brilliantly. So really now for us, there's not a massive amount of stuff left to do. There is a bit more cleaning down to do. There's a tiny bit of painting, and then like I say, we can get that handed over and really weigh up what we're doing with the groundworks here. Now, going back to what I said just a minute ago, you know what, that still retains here, and I am still here and here in terms of hair and body. I'm going to say that the blame is not actually on me. I'm back to where I was before. I was promised the earth and I was delivered very little. There are some buildings to go here in the future. I think at the minute we'll get the site done, finished, and then we'll start looking at what's the next phase really of this project. So like I say, that is pretty much it here. I'm not going to take any of the blame anymore. I've decided to pass it all on to the moron that was here that should have done the job properly in the first place, who I'm not going to mention who it is. If you like what you've seen, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and we will leave you with a mini little bit of footage that we've got here, the last job, and a tiny bit from the Arable montage. Boom.